The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as 7-year-old Lucas Hahn stood in the center of his father's opulent Manhattan penthouse, surrounded by the city's most eligible socialites. Each woman wore a practiced smile, their designer gowns worth more than most people's annual salaries, all vying for the attention of the powerful Korean Mafia boss who controlled half of New York's underground empire. "Choose, Lucas," William Hahn's deep voice commanded from his leather chair, his dark eyes never leaving his son's face. "Which one of these ladies would you like as your new mother?" The women straightened, their smiles becoming more radiant, more desperate. Mrs. Pemberton adjusted her pearl necklace. Miss Chen smoothed her silk dress. Lady Morrison stepped forward slightly, confident in her pedigree, but Lucas's gaze wasn't on any of them. Instead, his innocent brown eyes searched the room until they found the figure quietly collecting empty glasses near the kitchen entrance. A beautiful black woman with natural curls framing her face, wearing a simple black uniform that couldn't hide her grace. "I choose her," Lucas said clearly, pointing directly at Celeste Washington. "I choose the nice lady who always smiles at me." The room fell into stunned silence. William's jaw tightened as every socialite turned to stare at the maid, who had just unknowingly changed everything. "Welcome to Korean Mafia Lovers. Hey everyone, please tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support makes all the difference for us to keep creating these emotional stories." 6 months earlier, Celeste Washington had walked through the imposing glass doors of the Hahn Tower with nothing but determination and a prayer. The 40-story building in Midtown Manhattan housed not only William Hahn's legitimate business empire, but also served as his primary residence on the top 3 floors. The interview had been conducted by Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, a stern woman in her 50s. "Mr. Hahn values discretion above all else," she had explained. "You will see nothing, hear nothing, and speak of nothing that occurs in this household." Celeste had nodded, thinking of her mother's medical bills. The salary offered was 3 times what she could earn anywhere else. For someone with a degree in early childhood education who couldn't find work due to budget cuts, this felt like a lifeline. "You have experience with children?" Mrs. Chen had asked. "Yes, ma'am. I taught kindergarten for 3 years before the school closed." Something in Mrs. Chen's expression had softened. "Mr. Hahn has a 7-year-old son. The boy doesn't interact much with the staff." Now, as she moved quietly through the penthouse, Celeste reflected on how different this world was from anything she had known. The Hahn penthouse was a study in understated luxury, Korean art mixed with modern American design, creating an atmosphere both beautiful and intimidating. She had learned to navigate the household's complex hierarchy. Mrs. Chen managed the domestic staff with military precision. Mr. Park handled William's business affairs. The security team, led by Jin, moved through the space like shadows. And then there was William Hahn himself. Celeste had only seen him a handful of times, but each encounter left her with the same unsettling feeling, as if she had been studied by someone who missed nothing. He was younger than expected, perhaps mid-30s, with sharp, handsome features that belonged on magazine covers rather than in police files. But there was something in his dark eyes that spoke of depth she didn't want to explore. "Miss Washington," Mrs. Chen's voice cut through her thoughts. "Mr. Hahn requires the study prepared for a meeting this evening." As she worked in the study, carefully polishing crystal, she heard soft footsteps. Lucas Hahn appeared in the doorway, a beautiful child with his father's sharp features softened by youth, but there was something lonely about him that tugged at Celeste's heart. "Hello, Lucas," she said softly. "How are you today?" The boy stepped into the room. "You're not supposed to talk to me," he said, but there was no accusation in his voice. "You're right," Celeste admitted. "But sometimes rules are meant to be bent a little, don't you think?" Lucas moved closer, drawn by her warm smile. "What are you doing?" "Making sure everything is perfect for your father's meeting. See how the crystal catches the light when it's clean?" She held up a glass and Lucas's eyes followed the rainbow patterns it cast. "It's pretty," he said quietly, "like magic. Everything can be magical if you look at it the right way." For the next few minutes, Lucas watched her work, asking questions. Celeste found herself explaining not just her tasks, but stories behind the objects, how crystal was made, why books needed careful dusting, how different cultures created art. "You know a lot of things," Lucas observed. "I used to be a teacher. I taught children just about your age. Why don't you teach anymore? The question hit a sore spot. Sometimes life changes our plans, but I still love learning new things and sharing them with curious minds like yours. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lucas's entire demeanor changed. His back straightened, his expression became neutral, and he stepped away from Celeste. William Hahn appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, and his dark eyes swept the scene with predatory precision. "Lucas," his voice carried unmistakable authority. "What are you doing here?" "I was just watching her work, Father," Lucas replied, his voice smaller now. William's gaze shifted to Celeste. "Miss Washington, is my son disturbing your work?" "Not at all, Mr. Hahn," she replied steadily. "He was just curious about the crystal." "Curiosity can be dangerous," William said. "Lucas, you have tutoring with Mr. Kim in 10 minutes. "Yes, Father." Lucas headed toward the door but paused to look back at Celeste. "Thank you for showing me the magic." After they left, Celeste found her hands shaking slightly. There had been something in William Hahn's expression when he looked at his son. Not coldness exactly, but a careful distance that seemed unnatural between father and child. That evening, as she retreated to her small room in the staff quarters, Celeste couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. For 6 months, she had successfully remained invisible, but today she had been truly seen, by both the lonely boy who craved connection and by the powerful man who seemed to trust no one. 3 weeks later, Celeste noticed the changes. Lucas had started finding excuses to be wherever she was working, appearing in the kitchen when she prepared his snack, lingering in hallways when she cleaned nearby rooms, always with innocent questions that led to conversation. Mrs. Chen had noticed too. "He's been eating better," she confided one morning, "and he stopped having those nightmares." Celeste had learned that Lucas's mother had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. Since then, the boy had retreated into himself, becoming a shadow in his own home. His father had grown even more distant, burying himself in business affairs. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Celeste was in the library when she heard muffled crying. Following the sound, she found Lucas curled up behind a leather armchair, tears streaming down his face. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, kneeling down. "What's wrong?" "I'm not supposed to cry," Lucas whispered. "Father says crying is for weak people." Celeste felt her heart break. "Oh, honey, that's not true. Crying is just how our hearts talk when words aren't enough." "Really? Really? Can you tell me what made your heart so sad?" Lucas looked up with those dark eyes. "Today is my mama's birthday. I wanted to put flowers on her picture, but Mrs. Chen said I shouldn't bother Father with silly things. That's not silly at all. Remembering people we love is one of the most important things we can do. Would you like me to help you find some flowers?" Lucas's face lit up with hope. "You would do that?" "Of course, but we should probably ask your father first. He's in a meeting. He said not to disturb him for anything." Celeste made a pivotal decision. "Well, then we'll just have to be very quiet about it." She led Lucas to the rooftop garden, where they selected white roses and baby's breath. Lucas chatted excitedly about his mother as they worked. "She used to read to me every night," he told Celeste, "and she made the best kimchi jjigae in the whole world." In his room, they arranged the flowers beneath a portrait of a beautiful Korean woman, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "She's beautiful," Celeste said sincerely. "She would have liked you," Lucas said with childlike certainty. "She always said the best people are the ones who make others feel happy." They were so absorbed that neither heard the door open. "What is the meaning of this?" William's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood in the doorway, his usually perfect composure cracked. His eyes moved from the flowers to his son's tear-stained but happy face, then to Celeste. "Father, Lucas began, but William held up a hand. "Miss Washington," his voice was deadly quiet, "I believe you were given specific instructions about your duties." Celeste stood slowly, her heart pounding. "Yes, sir, I apologize. Lucas was upset and You took it upon yourself to override my household staff and involve yourself in family matters that are none of your concern." The words stung because they were true, but Celeste couldn't regret what she had done. "You're right, but he was crying because he missed his mother, and I couldn't just walk away from that." Something flickered in William's eyes, surprised that she wasn't cowering. You couldn't walk away. No, sir, I couldn't. Father, Lucas said quietly, Miss Celeste helped me give Mama flowers for her birthday. She said remembering people we love is important. William's gaze shifted to his son, and for a moment his mask slipped. Celeste saw the pain there, raw and unhealed. Lucas, go wash your hands for dinner. I need to speak with Miss Washington privately. After the boy left, William moved to stand before his wife's portrait. She died on a rainy Tuesday, he said quietly. A drunk driver ran a red light. She was coming home from Lucas's school. Celeste remained silent, sensing this was a confession. For 2 years, I have tried to protect him from the pain of remembering. I thought if we didn't talk about her, it would hurt less. But it doesn't work that way, Celeste said softly. Pain doesn't disappear when we ignore it. William turned to face her. You have experience with loss. My father died when I was 12. My mother tried to protect me the same way you're protecting Lucas. It took me years to understand that we could have helped each other instead of suffering alone. And yet you chose to interfere in my family's grief. I chose to help a little boy who was crying, Celeste replied firmly, and I'd do it again. William studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who would follow orders without question. Someone who would remain invisible. He paused. Someone who wouldn't make my son smile. The admission hung between them, loaded with implications. Mr. Hahn, if you'd prefer, I can request a transfer to a different position. No. The word came out forcefully. No. Lucas has been happier since you arrived. I won't disrupt that. Thank you. But there will be conditions. If you're going to be involved in my son's life, it will be on my terms. You will report to me directly about his emotional state. You will not make decisions about his care without consulting me first. I understand. William stepped closer. Do you? Because I don't think you understand what kind of man you're working for, Miss Washington. I don't think you understand the kind of world you've just stepped into. There was a warning in his words, but also concern. Then maybe you should tell me. For a moment, William looked as if he might, but then his phone buzzed, and he stepped back. Dinner is in an hour. Lucas will expect you to join us. I usually eat with the other staff. Not anymore. If you're going to be part of his life, you'll be part of his routine. He was almost to the door when Celeste found her voice. Mr. Hahn, thank you for letting me stay. Don't thank me yet, Miss Washington. You may find that getting what you want in this house comes with a price you're not prepared to pay. 2 months passed, and the Hahn household settled into a new rhythm. Celeste's role had evolved from simple domestic staff to something more complex. Part caregiver, part confidant, part bridge between a father and son, learning to navigate grief together. William had kept his word about reporting directly to him. Every evening at 8 o'clock, after Lucas was in bed, Celeste would provide updates on his son's day. These meetings had started as brief, professional exchanges, but gradually evolved into discussions about Lucas's education, his emotional development, and occasionally carefully neutral conversations about their own backgrounds. What neither acknowledged was the growing tension that filled the room during their meetings, the way William's eyes lingered on her face when she spoke, or how Celeste's pulse quickened when he leaned closer to review Lucas's schoolwork. It was a Thursday evening in November when everything changed again. Celeste was in the kitchen with Lucas, preparing a special dinner for William's return from a business trip. They had planned Korean barbecue with traditional sides, plus William's favorite dessert, apple pie. Lucas was excited to show off the cooking skills Celeste had been teaching him. They were so absorbed in preparations that they didn't hear the commotion in the main hallway until it was too late. The penthouse door burst open, and 3 men in expensive suits stormed in, followed by William, whose face was a mask of controlled fury. Behind them came Jin and 2 security guards, their hands hovering near concealed weapons. I told you, Nakamura, William was saying, his voice deadly calm. This is not a negotiation. You don't come into my home uninvited. The man he was addressing, a tall, thin Japanese man with silver hair and cold eyes, smiled without warmth. But William-san, when you refuse to return my calls, what choice do I have? Celeste immediately moved to shield Lucas, who had gone pale. She recognized the danger even without understanding the details. Lucas, she whispered, Go to your room. Now. But it was too late. Nakamura's eyes had found them in the kitchen doorway, and his smile widened with predatory interest. "And who do we have here?" he said, moving toward them. "The famous son, and his nanny." "They are not part of this discussion," William said sharply, positioning himself between Nakamura and his family. "Lucas, go to your room immediately." But Nakamura was faster. In one fluid motion, he reached past William and grabbed Celeste's wrist, pulling her forward. "Actually, I think they are very much part of this discussion. You see, William-san, I've been watching your household for some time. Very interesting changes lately." William's entire body went rigid. "Let her go." "Such concern for the help," Nakamura mused, his grip tightening. "Tell me, is she just the nanny, or is she something more?" Celeste could feel the violence building in the room like electricity before a storm. Lucas was frozen in terror, and William looked like he was calculating the fastest way to kill every person who had threatened his family. "Please," Celeste said quietly, looking directly at Nakamura, "whatever business you have with Mr. Han, it has nothing to do with his son. Let me take the boy somewhere safe." Nakamura studied her with interest. "Brave and beautiful. I can see the appeal." He turned back to William. "Here's my proposal, William-san. You give me what I want, the shipping routes through the port of New York, and I'll forget I ever saw your lovely employee. And if I refuse? Then I think your household staff might start having accidents, starting with this one." The threat hung in the air like poison. Celeste felt Lucas move closer to her, and she made a decision that would haunt her for weeks. "Mr. Han," she said clearly, "give him what he wants." William's eyes snapped to hers, dark with fury, and hurt that she would think so little of his ability to protect her. "I said, give him what he wants," she repeated steadily. "It's just business, right? Nothing is worth putting Lucas in danger." For a moment the room was silent. Then William laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "You think I would trade my territory for a woman I barely know?" he said, his voice cutting. "You think you mean that much to me?" The words hit Celeste like physical blows, but she understood what he was doing. He was trying to make her seem unimportant, trying to remove her as a target. "Interesting," Nakamura said softly. "If she means so little, then you won't mind if I take her with me as a insurance?" "No." The word exploded from William with such force that everyone took a step back. In that single syllable, he had revealed everything he had been trying to hide. Nakamura's smile was triumphant. "Ah, there it is. The truth at last." What happened next occurred so quickly that Celeste barely had time to process it. William moved with lethal precision, his hand finding a gun she hadn't seen him draw. Jin and the security guards produced their own weapons, and suddenly the elegant penthouse had become a war zone. "Lucas, down!" Celeste shouted, pulling the boy behind the kitchen island just as the first shot rang out. The gunfight lasted less than 30 seconds. When silence finally fell, Celeste cautiously raised her head to see William standing over Nakamura's motionless form, his weapon still drawn. The other intruders were down as well, Jin and his team having moved with deadly efficiency. There was blood on the marble floor, and the smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. "Is anyone hurt?" William's voice was steady, professional. "We're okay," Celeste managed, her voice shaking. Lucas was pressed against her side, trembling but unharmed. William moved toward them, his expression softening as he saw his son's terrified face. "Lucas, look at me." The boy raised his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You're safe," William said firmly. "I will always keep you safe. Do you understand?" Lucas nodded, then surprised everyone by launching himself into his father's arms. William caught him, holding him tightly. "Jin," William said over his son's head, "clean this up, make it disappear, and double the security detail immediately." William's eyes found Celeste's. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered, though she felt like everything she thought she knew had been revealed as an illusion. "Good." His voice was gentle, but there was something else in his expression, a warning, perhaps, or an apology. "Lucas, go pack a bag. We're leaving for the safe house tonight." "What about Miss Celeste?" Lucas asked. William's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Miss Washington will be staying here." "No." Lucas's protest was immediate and fierce. "She has to come with us. What if the bad men come back for her? Lucas, please, Father. She saved me. She protected me. Celeste could see the war playing out on William's face, his desire to keep her safe warring with his knowledge that being close to him would only put her in more danger. Mr. Hahn, she said quietly, maybe it would be better if I left entirely, found another job somewhere far from here. No, the word came out harsher than he intended. No, you're part of this now, whether we like it or not. Nakamura's people know about you, which means other enemies will learn about you too. The safest place for you is with us. Are you sure? William looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression, a decision being made, a line being crossed. I'm sure, he said quietly. Pack your things, Miss Washington. You're coming with us. The safe house was a sprawling estate in the Hamptons, hidden behind high walls and sophisticated security systems. For 3 weeks they lived in suspended reality. Lucas continued his studies with tutors. William conducted business from a high-tech command center, and Celeste tried to maintain normalcy for all of them. But the dynamic between her and William had shifted dramatically since the attack. The careful professional distance was gone, replaced by something electric and dangerous that neither knew how to handle. William began joining them for Lucas's bedtime routine, something he had never done before. He would sit beside his son's bed while Celeste read stories, and she could feel his eyes on her, studying her expressions, the way she made his son laugh. Their evening reports now took place in William's study, rather than his office. The room was smaller, more intimate, and their conversations had evolved beyond Lucas's activities to include discussions of books, politics, philosophy, everything except the growing attraction that hummed between them. You're not what I expected, William said one evening, echoing his words from months earlier. They were sitting by the fireplace, sharing wine after Lucas had gone to bed. The setting was dangerously domestic, and Celeste was acutely aware of how handsome William looked in the flickering light. What did you expect? She asked. Someone simpler, he admitted. Someone who wouldn't challenge me, who wouldn't make me question the choices I've made. And do I? Make you question your choices? William was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Every day, he said finally. From the moment you chose to comfort my son instead of following orders, you've been turning my world upside down. I'm sorry. Don't be. He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. I've spent 2 years building walls around my heart, around Lucas's heart, thinking that if we didn't let anyone in, we couldn't be hurt again. But you walked right through those walls like they didn't exist. Celeste felt her pulse quicken. They were venturing into dangerous territory. William, do you know what the hardest part is? He continued, his voice low and rough. It's not that I'm falling for you, it's that I fell for you months ago, and I've been lying to myself about it ever since. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Celeste's heart was pounding. This is complicated, she whispered. Everything in my life is complicated. William stood and moved to the window. But this feels like the first simple thing I've experienced in years. I care about you, Celeste. More than I should. More than is safe for either of us. William. She stood as well, moving closer. I care about you too, but we both know this can't work. I'm your employee. I'm Lucas's caregiver, and you're... A criminal, he finished flatly. A man who kills people for a living. A man who can't promise you safety or a normal life. A man who protects the people he loves, Celeste corrected softly. A man who would do anything for his son. A man who's been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for so long, he's forgotten what it feels like to let someone help. William turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression took her breath away. You see too much. Maybe you don't see enough. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You're not the monster you think you are, aren't I? His hand covered hers, pressing it against his cheek. I've killed 17 people, Celeste. I would kill 17 more without hesitation if it meant keeping you and Lucas safe. I know, she said simply. And that should terrify me, but it doesn't. Because I understand that everything you do comes from love. Twisted, complicated love maybe, but love nonetheless. William stared at her for a long moment, and then he was kissing her, his hands tangling in her hair, his mouth desperate and hungry against hers. Celeste melted into him, her body responding with an intensity that shocked her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, William rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he whispered. "I know. There's no going back. I know. My enemies will use you against me. I know." Celeste looked up at him, her eyes steady and sure. "I'm not going anywhere, William. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Before William could respond, Lucas's voice echoed from upstairs. "Miss Celeste, Father, I had a bad dream." They broke apart and hurried upstairs to comfort the frightened child. As they sat on either side of Lucas's bed, reading him back to sleep, Celeste caught William's eye over his son's head. The look that passed between them was full of promise and possibility, but also of the challenges that lay ahead. They had crossed a line tonight, admitted feelings that couldn't be taken back. Now they had to figure out how to build a life together in a world that would try to tear them apart. 2 days later, everything fell apart. Celeste was in the garden with Lucas when Jin appeared with an expression she had never seen before: panic. "Miss Washington," he said urgently, "we need to get inside. Now." "What's wrong?" "Someone's breached the perimeter. Multiple someones." The next few minutes were a blur. Jin hustled them into the house, while security guards took positions at every window and door. William appeared from his office, already armed, his face a mask of cold determination. "How many?" he asked Jin. "At least 12, professional team. They knew exactly where to hit our weak spots." William's jaw tightened. "Yamamoto. That's my guess. He's been planning this since we took out Nakamura." The lights went out, plunging the house into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "They've cut the power," Jin reported, "and they're jamming our communications. We're on our own." William moved to Celeste and Lucas. "There's a panic room in the basement. Jin will take you there." "What about you?" "I'll hold them off as long as I can." "No," Celeste's voice was firm. "We stay together or we don't go at all." "Celeste." "I said no, William. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for us." Before William could respond, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the house. They were out of time. "Move," William ordered, and they ran. What followed was the longest night of Celeste's life. They fought their way through the house, William and his security team engaging the attackers while she kept Lucas safe. She saw William kill 3 men with ruthless efficiency, saw him take a bullet in the shoulder without slowing down. But there were too many of them, and eventually they were cornered in William's study. "It's over, Han," a voice called from the hallway. "Send out the woman and the boy and we'll make this quick." William's response was to put another round through the doorframe. "Come and take them." Celeste looked around the room desperately, searching for another way out. That's when she saw it, William's computer, still connected despite the communications jamming. "William," she whispered urgently, "your computer. Can you contact anyone?" "Not the police, they won't come for me." "Then who will?" William was quiet for a moment, then his expression changed. "My sister. She has connections in the FBI." Working quickly, he sent a message while Jin and the remaining guards held the door. But Celeste could see they were running out of ammunition, running out of time. That's when Lucas did something that changed everything. The 7-year-old boy walked to the center of the room and spoke in a clear, carrying voice. "My name is Lucas Han, and these men are trying to kill my family. If anyone can hear this, please help us." He was speaking into William's computer, which was connected to a live video conference system. Lucas had somehow activated the emergency broadcast function, and his plea was being transmitted to every contact in William's business network. Within minutes, the sound of helicopters filled the air. William's allies, other crime families, law enforcement officials who owed him favors, even legitimate businessmen who valued his protection, had mobilized with unprecedented speed. The siege was over in less than an hour. When the dust settled, Yamamoto and his men were either dead or in custody, and the Han family was safe. But as they stood in the wreckage of the safe house, Celeste realized that everything had changed again. "We can't keep living like this," she said quietly to William as they watched Lucas being checked by a paramedic. "He's just a child. He shouldn't have to grow up in a war zone." William nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're right. It's time to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" William looked at her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Determination, but also hope. The kind that will give us a chance at a real future, he said. All of us. 6 months later, the penthouse had been transformed. Gone were the cold, intimidating spaces that had once defined William's world. In their place were warm, lived-in rooms that spoke of family, of love, of a life built around more than just power and fear. William had made good on his promise to change. He had gradually transitioned his business interests toward legitimate enterprises, using his connections and resources to build an empire that didn't require violence to maintain. It hadn't been easy, but with Celeste's support and Lucas's innocent faith in his father's ability to be better, William had found a different path. The transformation hadn't gone unnoticed by New York's elite society. Invitations to charity galas and business functions had begun arriving. Opportunities for William to establish himself as a legitimate businessman. Most of these invitations included provisions for bringing family members, which brought them to this moment. "I don't understand why this is necessary," Celeste said, smoothing down her elegant black dress. "I'm perfectly happy staying home with Lucas." "Because," William said, adjusting his tie, "if we're going to build a new life, we need to be seen as a family, a real family." Tonight's event was particularly significant, a charity auction for children's education, hosted by some of Manhattan's most influential families. William had not only purchased a table, but had also made a substantial donation. The auction was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and as their car pulled up to the red carpet entrance, Celeste felt her nervousness spike. "I don't belong here," she whispered to William. "You belong wherever I am," he replied firmly, taking her hand. "Remember that." The evening began smoothly. William moved through the crowd with confidence, introducing Celeste as his partner in both business and life. Lucas charmed everyone he met, his natural intelligence and good manners earning approving nods from society matrons. But it was during the auction itself that the evening took an unexpected turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer announced, "our next item is quite special. We have a week-long vacation package to a private resort in the Maldives, donated by Han Enterprises." Celeste looked at William in surprise. He hadn't mentioned donating anything to the auction. "The starting bid is $50,000, the auctioneer continued. Hands went up around the room, but William remained still, watching with an expression Celeste couldn't read. The bidding continued to climb, reaching astronomical heights. Celeste was about to ask William why he wasn't participating when she noticed something odd. Every person bidding was a woman, and they were all looking at William with expressions that ranged from hopeful to predatory. "What's going on?" she whispered. William's jaw tightened. "They're not bidding on the vacation," he said quietly. "They're bidding on me." "What?" "The package includes a personal escort, me. It was supposed to be a joke, a way to raise money for charity. I didn't realize her." $500,000, called out a blonde woman in a red dress, going once. Celeste felt something hot and fierce rise in her chest. Jealousy, yes, but more than that, possessiveness. The absolute certainty that William Han belonged to her and her alone. Going twice. Without thinking, Celeste stood up. $1 million, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. The auctioneer's gavel froze in midair. Every head turned to stare at her. "I'm sorry," the auctioneer said, clearly flustered, "but the bidding is for—" "I know what the bidding is for," Celeste interrupted, her eyes never leaving William's face. "And I'm bidding $1 million for a week with my man." The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then William stood as well, his expression intense and unreadable. "Sold," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the room. "To the woman who already owns my heart." The room erupted in applause, but Celeste barely heard it. She was focused entirely on William. On the way, he was looking at her like she was the most magnificent thing he had ever seen. "That was quite a declaration," he said when he reached her side. "I meant every word." "Good," William said, his hand finding hers, "because I have a declaration of my own to make." Before Celeste could ask what he meant, William was moving toward the stage, Lucas at his side. The auctioneer handed him the microphone, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," William began, "I want to thank you all for your generous support of children's education tonight. As someone who has recently discovered the transformative power of learning and growth, this cause is particularly close to my heart." He paused, his eyes finding Celeste in the crowd. "But I have another reason for being here tonight. 6 months ago, my son taught me something important about family, about love, and about the courage to choose what matters most." William gestured for Lucas to join him at the microphone. "Lucas," William said, "would you like to tell everyone about the choice you made?" Lucas took the microphone with both hands, standing on his tiptoes to reach it properly. "My father asked me to choose a mother from all the pretty ladies who came to our house," he said in his clear, young voice, "but I didn't choose any of them. I chose Miss Celeste because she makes the best cookies, and she reads stories with funny voices, and she makes my father smile." The crowd murmured appreciatively, but Lucas wasn't finished. "And now I want to ask her something very important." Celeste felt her heart stop as Lucas looked directly at her. "Miss Celeste, will you be my real mother? Forever and always?" The room held its breath as William took the microphone back. "What my son is asking," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is what I should have asked months ago. Celeste Washington, you have transformed our lives in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me that strength isn't about building walls, it's about having the courage to let them down for the right person." William reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, and Celeste's knees nearly gave out. "You've shown me that love isn't a weakness to be feared, but a strength to be celebrated. You've given my son the mother he deserves, and you've given me a reason to become the man I want to be." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. "Celeste Washington, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Lucas's mother, and the heart of our family for the rest of our lives?" The room was so quiet that Celeste could hear her own heartbeat. She looked at William, standing on the stage with his heart in his hands, and at Lucas, whose face was bright with hope and excitement. For a moment, she thought about how impossible this all seemed. A year ago, she had been struggling to pay her mother's medical bills, working as a maid just to survive. Now she was being proposed to by one of the most powerful men in New York, in front of hundreds of people who represented everything she had never thought she could have. But then she remembered what had brought them to this moment. Not money or power or social status, but love. Pure, complicated, transformative love that had grown from the simple act of comforting a lonely child. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, I'll marry you, both of you." The room exploded in applause as William jumped down from the stage and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as Lucas cheered and clapped. When he set her down, he slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that were surprisingly steady. "I love you," he whispered against her ear. "I love you too," she whispered back. "All of you, forever." Lucas launched himself at both of them, wrapping his arms around their legs and looking up at them with pure joy. "Does this mean I can call you Mom now?" he asked Celeste. "If you want to," she said, kneeling down to his level. "But you know what? You've been my son in my heart for months already." "Really? Really? From the moment you chose me, I chose you right back." Lucas beamed and threw his arms around her neck. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart, so much." As they stood there in the middle of the museum, surrounded by applause and celebration, Celeste marveled at how perfectly everything had fallen into place. The lonely little boy who had needed a mother, the powerful man who had needed someone to see past his armor, the woman who had needed a family to call her own. They had found each other against all odds in a world that should have kept them apart. And now they were going to build something beautiful together, not just a marriage but a real family, founded on love and trust and the courage to choose each other every single day. Years later, the sound of children's laughter echoed through the penthouse as Celeste put the finishing touches on Lucas's birthday cake. At 12 years old, he had grown into a confident, compassionate young man who spoke 3 languages fluently, excelled in his studies, and had inherited both his father's sharp intelligence and his mother's warm heart. "Mum, is it ready yet?" he called from the living room, where he was entertaining his younger sister, 3-year-old Grace, with magic tricks. "Almost, sweetheart," Celeste called back, smiling at how naturally the word "Mom" still made her heart flutter. William appeared in the kitchen doorway, loosening his tie after a long day at the office. His legitimate business empire had grown exponentially, and he was now recognized as one of New York's most successful entrepreneurs and philanthropists. "How was the board meeting?" Celeste asked, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him hello. "Productive," he said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "The Children's Hospital project is moving forward ahead of schedule." The hospital was William's latest philanthropic endeavor, a state-of-the-art pediatric facility that would serve underprivileged children throughout the city. "Grace helped me frost the cake," Celeste told him, gesturing to the slightly lopsided but lovingly decorated creation on the counter. "Did she now?" William's expression softened, as it always did when discussing their daughter. Grace had been an unexpected blessing, arriving 2 years after their wedding and completing their family in a way none of them had anticipated. As the family gathered in the living room for the birthday celebration, Celeste found herself marveling at the life they had built together. The penthouse that had once been a cold, intimidating fortress was now filled with warmth and laughter. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Celeste told Lucas as he prepared to blow out his candles. Lucas closed his eyes, his face serious with concentration. When he opened them again, he looked around the room at his family. "I wished for this," he said simply, "for all of us to be happy and together forever." "That's a good wish," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "The best wish." Later that evening, as they stood alone on the terrace looking out at the city lights, William pulled Celeste closer. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "None," Celeste said firmly. "This is exactly where I belong." Even knowing what my world was like, what it might always be like to some degree. Celeste looked at him, this man who had killed to protect her, who had changed his entire life to give his son a better future, who had just proposed to her in front of hundreds of people without caring what anyone thought. "Especially knowing that," she said, "because your world isn't about violence or power or fear anymore. It's about this." She gestured to encompass their entire life together. "It's about family. It's about love. It's about choosing to be better than what the world expects from us." William brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her engagement ring. "You're going to be an amazing mother," he said softly. "And you're already an amazing father. We're going to be okay, William, all of us." As they stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city that had brought them together, they thought about the future they would continue to build. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new choices to make, new ways to grow and love and become the family they were meant to be. The Korean Mafia boss had asked his son to choose a mother among the socialites, but Lucas had chosen the Maid, and in doing so he had chosen love over status, authenticity,